All right, folks, get this, that you're here and I'm here now, and that's all we need. We've got the makings of a great night here at the Voice of College Football. So welcome in on a Thursday late night after football off the air in both the NFL and college football. Tonight we get that Thursday taste, and then a little bit more football on Friday, and then the big explosion of games on a Saturday, of course. And who knows what awaits us this Saturday? Who knows what awaits us? We believe we know. We think we know. We think we've got it tracked. We think we've got a barometer on the course of this college football season, but we really don't. We really don't. And who knows what's going to happen this Saturday? We've got some thoughts. We will go through the schedule, preview week 6, and, of course, take your calls right here at the Voice of College Football. We are here for an unspecified length of time. For an unspecified length of time. Yes. Glad to have everybody here. I will respond to all the comments and the questions in the live chat. Of course, I am taking calls again. I will get that number posted here very soon. We do have one result from college football tonight, and we've got a Houston win over Tulane. Cougars winning 40-22. Houston now at 5-1 on the season. Clayton Tune, pretty substantial quarterback there for Houston. 23 of 36, 288 through the air, 3 touchdowns, no picks. Houston wins it 40-22 over Tulane. Michael Pratt, a really good quarterback who had a nice freshman season in the American Conference for Tulane last year, hit on 20 of 30 for 214, 2 touchdowns. But Houston wins it easily, 40-22. Of course, the Cougs were tripped up by Texas Tech in week 1. Otherwise, they would be perfect. And we could be talking Houston along with BYU and Cincinnati for a possible college football playoff run as a group of 5 team. Or in BYU's case, the argument could be made, are they a group of 5? Are they a power 5? They're an independent. So we will go through our schedule, beginning with what I think is a pretty darn good matchup tomorrow night. It's not necessarily between 2 football teams that are going to contend for the playoff. I can about guarantee that. But we've got Arizona State taking on Stanford on Friday night, and I'm looking forward to that. Great to see everybody in the chat. Hopefully we'll get some more folks in here as we move it along. Right out of the gate, Langschlang 69, is Mark canceling tonight's show? No, Mark is just late. Only by 4 minutes. I think I was just 4 minutes late. Patience, please. Thank you for that. I will do better. Then we've got DeReal MVP. Not sure if it's just me, but I'm pretty sure Kentucky beats LSU. I feel better about this game than Florida. DeReal MVP, of course, the big Kentucky fan. We recorded a segment today with Kevin McGuffey from Last Word on College Football that will be posted to our SEC channel. So DeReal MVP, check it out tomorrow, previewing Kentucky and LSU. Of course, the Cats coming off the big win over Florida, in which they were beaten up and down the field on the stat sheet. Will Levis hit on 7 of 17. Chris Rodriguez, of course, led the way rushing the football, but it was that Kentucky defense and special teams that led the way in the big win, first in forever in Lexington against Florida. Now Kentucky at 5-0 takes aim at LSU. Another home game for the Cats. They can't look past LSU. This is going to be a real test for this football team to see if they can get up after a quality opponent back-to-back weeks. Good to see Tyler here. Hopefully Tyler is still here. Tyler Jenkins and Jason. Sup? Sue. Hey, Sue. Hey, Sue. Sue says go Bucks. And long schlong. I got it wrong the first time. We still have an issue with the contact/glasses. I'll not go into my medical situation right now regarding all of that, but I get quite lazy here at times and don't want to put the contacts in, and the glasses are no more. So we will get that corrected at some point. But yeah, long schlong, my apologies. You're here. And that's all that matters. Long schlong 69. So, yeah, let's crank it up here at the Voice of College Football. Until we get a call, I am simply going to go through the Week 6 schedule starting on Friday night to talk about what we've got. I would talk some Houston football, but the Cougars could finish with a nice little season. But college football playoff, of course, out of reach for the Cougars, just not a strong enough schedule. They are 5-1, but they lost to Texas Tech. Texas Tech is not a very good football team. Texas Tech does have a nice record. I get that. They have a nice record, but just look at the sample against Texas 2 weeks ago, losing and giving up 70 points. I got to say that I was a bit surprised by the Texas Tech win against West Virginia this past weekend, but Texas Tech with a week 1 win over Houston. Otherwise, the Cougars might be gaining some attention by the likes of me and others. And Tulane, of course, ever since the week 1 showing against Oklahoma, when people were taking notice of Tulane, thinking, hey, look at this football team. Tulane's been winning 6 or 7 games each year, barely getting to bowl games. That's been kind of their place in the American Conference the past 4 or 5 years to get to bowl games. 6-6, 7-5. But they had the week 1 game against Oklahoma, scared the heck out of Lincoln Riley, 40-35 on the Michael Pratt dive at the first down line at midfield. But since then, it's been mostly downhill for the Green Wave. 1-5, 0-2 in the conference. Let me take care of a few things before we get into the football. One would be Patreon. My predictions. The predictions from 20 media guests, many of your favorites right here at the Voice of College Football, are on Patreon. Go to Patreon, Voice of College Football Community. Look it up, MarkRogersTV. So I don't want to make that confusing. Voice of College Football Community. Yes. Go to Patreon. Search Mark Rogers TV, or go to the link in the description section of any of the videos. Go to Patreon for 17 cents a day. That's $5 per month. You get my predictions every week. You also get the predictions from the 20 media members. We've got a bit of a contest going. We've got a 12-pack of games each and every week. Why 12? Well, it sounds good. And also the spreadsheet that Google gave me, that one of those Google sheets, once I filled in the spots across the spreadsheet, it added up to 12 games the first week. So it became the 12-pack competition between the 20 media members and myself. I believe I'm in first place for picking the game straight up. And I'm either in second, I believe second place, maybe third place in this contest of 20 in picking the games against the spread. So check it out on Patreon. Also, you get Steve Merrill's Under the Radar selection of the week. His pick of the week, Under the Radar. We recorded that this afternoon. A pick that I believe many of you would be mighty surprised to hear. We also had our post right here on YouTube with Steve this afternoon, who addressed the Penn State Iowa game. Who else? Georgia Auburn and Texas Oklahoma. So check out that video if you're interested in the betting and wagering information from Steve Merrill. So join us on Patreon. Man, I just had a great conversation with a contributor to the show. A couple-hour conversation, very nice and interesting in regards to what we need to do to make this succeed here at the Voice of College Football. So I'm not going to bore you with that. All right. Our first take on a football game tonight comes from Sue. Sue likes Texas over Oklahoma. I think that's a pretty reasonable thought right there. Sooners a 3.5 point pick by Vegas. Texas playing better football right now. Texas has one of the best players in college football in Bijan Robinson, who was a monster last weekend. 35 carries against TCU, 216 yards. Xavier Worthy on the outside, and Joshua Moore for Texas. Casey Thompson, they made the right selection finally there at Texas. That Casey Thompson is the man. The only thing I don't like about this Texas matchup in particular, where I think they have a big disadvantage, Texas, the offensive line is both banged up, and it wasn't very good to begin with. And they're going to have to meet a pretty good Oklahoma defensive front. But the Sooners not playing well. The vibe at Texas seems to be much better than it is with the Sooners. The Sooners expected so much. Maybe they just thought they could roll out the footballs on the field this year and get it done. But, hey, they're 5-0. We can criticize, and we can certainly analyze and critique the performance as not being very good for Oklahoma, but when it's all said and done, they are 5-0. But Texas seems to be playing better football right now, at least over the past few weeks after getting thumped by Arkansas. So that would not surprise me. If you look at the series, Oklahoma's had the edge, no doubt, in recent years. They've been the much better team and have won the game generally, but it's usually something close to what we saw last year. Oklahoma only won by a touchdown in overtime game last year. And Oklahoma has not defeated Texas by more than one score. It's been a one-score game every year since 2012. All right, let's hit the phone lines, and I will get the number up here in just a second. I want to remind everyone that you can contribute right here at the Voice of College Footballs via the Super Chat, or on Venmo, PayPal, and Cash App. Just search Mark Rogers TV, Venmo, PayPal, and Cash App. Who we got on the line to lead us off tonight?
How's it going through? This is Steve.
Hey, Steve. How you doing tonight? I'm good. I am good.
I'm okay. Yeah, I sort of kind of wanted to get your take on something. With the whole name, image, and likeness, making its emergence, this year and its impact this year. I know two prominent quarterbacks this year, like Spencer Rattler and DJ out of Clemson. They actually benefited pretty prominently from the name, image, and likeness, signing pretty exclusive deals for themselves. And I wondered, they both got a lot of preseason hype. I know DJ was considered a Heisman candidate this year and a future top draft pick. And I believe Spencer Rattler was considered the Heisman favorite going into this season. I noticed they're both kind of struggling in their play. Do you think somehow maybe that managing that whole name, image, and likeness is affecting their play on the field?
I think you bring up an interesting thought there. You've got two examples right there. I don't know that Spencer Rattler's playing horrible football. He just hit 22 of 25 the other night. He's playing okay. I think we expect a lot out of him, and his offensive line has not played well. His offensive line has been poor, and his wide receiver play has not been up to Oklahoma standards. So it's a complete offensive breakdown there at Oklahoma. But he's not He's not lighting the world on fire. DJ Uiagalelei, he's in a similar situation, although to compare Oklahoma's offensive issues and Clemson's is not much of a comparison. Clemson is mightily struggling. OU is just not lighting it up as we would expect them to. Clemson is just, again, I go to the offensive line. If I hate to just necessarily blame it on them, and while most people look at the quarterbacks, yeah, DJ's not playing well either. And I think that going into this season, that I will say this to myself, making a bit of an assumption, and I think a lot of people fell into the same trap that because of his performance in just a couple of games last year, that we assumed, okay, we could check him off as the next great Clemson quarterback, that we had seen enough, but it apparently wasn't the case. I watched the game against Boston College, and we also cut a segment with Jason Priester from allclemson.com. And, he would tell you that DJ's not playing well, but that he played his best game against Boston College this week. And again, the other guys are letting him down. The offensive line at both places. So the Clemson offensive line performance has been much worse. But the Oklahoma one, they were supposed to have the best offensive line in the nation, according to Phil Steele, in a top 5 unit, and neither unit is playing anywhere close to that level. And they had a ton of dropped passes at Clemson last week. He would have thrown for 300 yards pretty easily without the drop passes. So I don't know. I think that's total speculation. I think you've made a connection there that could be valid, could not be valid. We also have quarterbacks like Bryce Young, who's also benefited from NIL, and he is tearing it up. And others, there are NIL deals all over the place. Bo Nix, who had a rough game a couple of weeks ago, but then he had a great game in coming back against LSU on Saturday night. So those are just 2 of many. Most of these guys at this point have something. We were only about 2 weeks into this, and I had already heard that there were something in the range of 1,400 football players that had some type of NIL deals. I'm not talking about that they were making millions of dollars, but had something. So just about everybody that plays on Saturday has something. And so I would not want to make that connection. I will not make that connection because I don't know what's going on between their ears. But it's possible. Anything could be a distraction. Yeah. They broke up with their girlfriend. Their parents are sick. They have falling out with one of their best friends. They're getting straight Fs. Whatever. All sorts of things could be distractions.
Oh, sure. Yes, sir. Yeah. No, I just thought because it's the first year they could benefit from it. And I thought maybe just having to manage that with everything else they have to manage, on and off the field. And, maybe I wondered, because I think DJ may have the most lucrative, or at least as far as visibly lucrative of the NIL, because I know he has a deal with Dr. Pepper and everything. He's already been featured on a national commercial. I just wondered maybe if they lost their kind of motivation, really on their field, because they're making pretty good money off the field. So I don't know. I know, but again, it could be rooted to a lot of things. But the other thing I wanted to get into, sir, if you don't mind, was I know Paul Feinbaum was very critical of Clemson, saying, particularly of Dabo Swinney, saying this is like the end of a dynasty. But do you believe, because of Clemson's talent that they have, they're just maybe doing a brief reload this year and then next year, or a brief rebuild this year and then next year they just kind of reload and get back on track?
I think that, and I heard what Paul Feinbaum said in evaluating Clemson, that the dynasty's over. So at some point it is going to be over for them, for Alabama, for whomever you want to fill in the blank, because nobody is going to sustain winning more than 90% of their games. That's just not going to happen. So it's going to happen at some point, depending on what you consider to be a dynasty. They have not won a national championship for the past 3 seasons, but they've been in the championship game 2 years ago. So I I consider it a dynasty still. I think that they're going to see challenges. What we're seeing in the ACC right now is that everybody's play, for the most part, has been downgraded, as opposed to what I would have expected to be Clemson's downfall would have been the uprising of other teams like North Carolina in particular, and long-term Miami and Florida State, because those are the schools that have the resources and have the recruiting base to do it. I don't think that Clemson's success is over. I think that their rate of success is, the probabilities tell us that the rate of their success is over. I do not expect them to go to the playoff every year and go to national championship games like every other year. So what they have done in the past 6 seasons, going to the playoffs every year, winning the ACC every year, going to, 4 national championship games in 6 years? 2015, 16, 18, 19. Yeah, 4 in 6 years, 4 in 5 years, and winning 2 of those national champions. That's not sustainable. So I would agree, if that's what he considers to be the end of a dynasty, that yes, they are nearing the end of a dynasty. They're not going to keep up that pace.
Yeah, yes, sir. No, I just wanted to get your take on that. But I appreciate the time this evening, and I'll allow for other people to call in. Thank you, sir, for your time.
I appreciate that. Have a good night.
Yes, sir. Thank you.
And we'll get to the next call here at the Voice of College Football, and I'll get this call-in line posted here at 860-499-3332. Want to remind everyone again that Arby's really isn't that good unless they want to sponsor me. If they want to sponsor me, I haven't had an Arby's. Somebody posted something about Arby's equating, hey, Voice of College Football on Patreon to Arby's. You get 1 Arby's sandwich versus the Voice of College Football on Patreon per month. Yeah, boy, that's a tough call. I'm worth a whole lot. An Arby's sandwich, 1 per month. So anyway, we've got our predictions there, and everybody else does. And we've got an insider look, and we've got 1 exclusive live stream over there per request as well. Let's get to our next call. Who's on the line
Mark,
here at the Voice of College Football?
I'm sorry, I got
Hello?
ahead of you. This is the real MVP. How you doing?
The real MVP. Good to hear from you. What's going on?
Good. Well, I kind of wanted to explain more to the last caller. I wanted to make a point that he didn't make, that I didn't hear at least. And that Alabama 2 years ago, they went 10-2, and everybody said the dynasty's dead.
Who
it's
went
over.
10-2?
It's got to come to an end. Alabama.
Okay. And
everybody said dynasty's dead.
Everybody?
A lot of people said it.
Okay, a lot of people. All right. I didn't say
Not
it.
everybody.
That's for sure.
Not everybody.
Okay.
But I'm thinking that's Clemson kind of in the same thing. They're having 1 bad year. Now, if it's 2 or 3 bad years, we can talk. But 1 bad year, everybody has a bad year. Okay? Not even Tom Brady didn't even go to the Super Bowls all years he was with the Patriots. So Clemson fans, I know you're worried. Just calm down. It's okay. It's okay. But anyway, I wanted to get on talk about my Cats for a moment. I left you the comment. I'm looking forward to hearing Kevin tomorrow on the SEC channel.
Excellent.
And I think the reason I'm more confident is because Kentucky's strength in this game is LSU's weakness. They cannot stop the run, and they cannot run the ball. And the 2 things Kentucky does great compared to most teams is they can run the ball, and they can stop the run. What do you think about that, Mark?
Well, I think you're simply just analyzing the 2 teams' strengths and weaknesses. Yes, Kentucky's got 2 impressive backs in Smoke and, of course, especially Rodriguez. and they play a physical style of football. And LSU has had issues against the running game. More specifically, last week, it was against the quarterback run with Bo Nix making some key runs. Tank Bigsby wasn't really a factor in the game. So there you go. Yes, Kentucky can run it. LSU has inability in stopping the run, and they're playing without two major secondary players this week in Major Burns, and especially Derek Stingley's not playing for LSU.
Yeah, and I mean, as a Kentucky fan, I know I don't know how many LSU fans, but I would have loved to see Stingley versus Robinson. That might have been the best wide receiver corner matchup this season in football. I mean, they're both going to be probably first picked at their positions if they decide to enter the draft or if they're eligible to. I want to ask you about this. I saw somebody, I think it was for 20, I don't remember who, but for 24/7 Sports, they put Wan'Dale Robinson on their Heisman watch list. You think that's a little too far for him?
Well, I don't think he plays in the style offense, nor does he get the opportunities to put up the kind of numbers that we would expect for a Heisman candidate. I don't think he's going to be quite there. So too. Also, do we really think that Wan'Dale Robinson is going to be the first wide receiver selected in the NFL draft this year?
Maybe. It's possible still. There's still a lot of football. There's a lot of great wide receivers, but he's leading the SEC in catches. He's third in yards right now, so he's doing really good. I mean, Ohio State is probably going to have first, but, I can fan a little bit. Just a little bit.
Of course you can. That's what this is all about. Fan away.
Yeah. Well, we had... what's weird, and people don't understand this, is Kentucky historically is one of the better teams in the draft. Like last year, we had 6 players drafted. Nobody kind of realizes that, but we just quietly, methodically have built up to this moment. I think because of who we're playing in LSU, I think we're not going to overlook them. It's a sold-out crowd, which is good, and that's going to help get us focused. I don't think LSU is going to have nearly as many as false starts as Florida. But I think Kentucky's going to win. My final prediction is 27-17 Kentucky. Have you, on your Patreon page,
yes,
was Kentucky one of the bets that you looked at?
So I pick all the top 25 games. Plus I add on some other ones. So for me personally, I predict about close to 25 games a week. But in terms of the 20 media members that pick a 12-pack, yes, Kentucky LSU is one of the games. Do you want me to count up the number of selections for each?
No.
Okay.
That's not necessary. I don't want to bore everybody's time in doing that. If they want to, you know what they can do is they can go over to your Patreon page and subscribe to it for just $5.99 a month.
Well, it's actually not even $5.99. We don't want to intimidate anyone with the 99 cents. $5 per month.
Oh, it's $5. That's one Arby's burger.
I guess it is. That's what I'm hearing tonight. I haven't had an Arby's in. I don't even know where there is an Arby's anymore.
I haven't had Arby's in like 2-3 years.
I don't think I've had one in about 20.
Dang. Well, Mark, you're a pretty thin guy compared to me. So you probably go out and work out a bunch based on your physique. The only thing I work out is putting my hand in the potato chips. But another game I wanted to ask you about.
Yeah.
It's not getting a lot of coverage, in my opinion, or nearly as much as it should, is Arkansas Ole Miss. I'm so confused on Arkansas this year because I'm not sure. Like, their big win was against Texas, but Texas brought in a new quarterback. Texas A&M we thought was great. They're not great, and you didn't think it, but a lot of people did.
Well,
So
no, I'm not going to
still
discount that I was a bit fooled by Texas A&M as well. So I don't want to just kind of brush that off and say everybody thought Texas A&M was going to be great, and I did not. I thought they were going to be much better than they are. So I was fooled as well.
Overrated is a better word. Overrated. Yep. So what do you think? Do you think this game, in my opinion, I think this game is going to tell me a whole lot more about Arkansas than Ole Miss. Do you kind of agree with that, or?
Well, it's going to tell me about both teams because to date, if anything, Ole Miss has not beaten the caliber of team that Arkansas has. So to answer your question, I don't look at games like that necessarily, but if I really want to answer your question, I'm going to know more about Ole Miss coming out of this game because their best wins are against Tulane and Louisville, while Arkansas has wins over Texas and Texas A&M. And if we're going to play a round robin between those four teams, I know which two I'll take. So
that's fair.
Arkansas for me has proven a little bit more than Ole Miss.
I see that. That's a good point. And speaking of Texas, I haven't seen anybody really pick them. I don't know why, because in my opinion, Texas, again, like I said, they switched quarterbacks and they're averaging 50 points a game since the new quarterback's in. They're 4-1. Their only losses to Arkansas, Oklahoma, can't beat anybody by more than 7 points. People saying, I don't think the Red River Shootout is going to be a close game. I think it's going to be more of a Red River blowout. I think Texas is probably going to win 35-14, something like that.
Wow.
I just don't see Oklahoma being good this year. Based on what I've seen on the field, Oklahoma's been disappointing to me. Really disappointing. Them and Texas A&M can play in the disappointment bowl is what they can do. I mean, it's a rivalry, so that might make it close, but everybody kind of wrote off Texas after they got crushed by Arkansas. Let me tell you, people, I know there's that one Texas fan that always comments and donates. Texas is good this year. Texas is real. I think people are going to wake up. I think Texas will probably move into the top 10 after this week. Have you had your thoughts about the game, Mark?
Well, I've got my thoughts about the game. I shared some of those earlier in response to Sue's question or her comment about the game. So I kind of threw it out there in regards to what I thought were strengths and weaknesses coming in. I noted Texas's deplorable offensive line, Oklahoma's what was supposed to be a top-rated offensive line that's not playing at that level. Both quarterbacks, I think, despite the criticism of Spencer Rattler, he is coming off a 22 for 25 performance. And so I don't see a whole lot of separation between the quarterback play, and Bijan Robinson is the best player on the field. So that gives Texas an advantage there. And with Rashawn Johnson backing him up, and he's a tremendous complimentary back, that I think, and I don't know when the last time I would have said this, that Texas has better skill position players, or they're playing better at wide receiver and running back than Oklahoma's players right now at those two positions, where Texas has not been a great offense for a long time since Colt McCoy, whereas Oklahoma typically has one of the top three offenses in college football. Texas would be playing better on that side of the ball right now. Defensively, though, I don't know. I think I'm still going to side with Oklahoma there. Despite their struggles, they've really not the struggles have been on the offensive side. The defense has played well.
Yeah.
For the most
played
part.
well, but they're frustrating. They'll give a series or two, and it's just like they forget how to tackle. They forget the coverage, the blown assignment.
Yeah.
So they play really well, but they allow one big play. One or two big plays a game, regardless of who they play. And I think with Texas running back, I don't think you're going to I don't think you're going to get away with that against him. I mean, that dude, he's the best running back in the country. I don't even think it's really that close this year. I mean, the dude is legit.
Yes,
He's
he's
a
awesome.
beast.
And so my point about the Texas offensive line, and I'm a big believer in offensive lines making the whole thing work. He needs less of an offensive line than just about any back, if not less so than any back in college football. He makes his own way. He's that powerful, that explosive, that quick, that fast. He's a freak.
Yeah. He's really good. And the final game I would like to discuss with you is, of course, the big game coming on at 4 p.m., Iowa versus Penn State. Now, I'm not sure if you remember this, Mark, but there was a game maybe 15 years ago at this point. The final score was Penn State had 4 and Iowa had 6. I think we're going toward that type of a struggle offense game because both of these defenses are amazing. They're elite. And I don't see any big plays, explosiveness out of them. I just see it as grinded out NFL field position type of game. But I think Iowa, with their crowd, I think they're going to pull through and probably win by 3 points.
So this 6-4 game. How old are you to real MVP? If you don't mind me asking. If you do, then certainly don't. You don't need to answer that question.
No. I'm comfortable. I had a birthday recently. I'm 22.
Okay, that's about what I would have guessed you. So you weren't around, or you were just kind of crawling around during that 6-4 game. So you must have looked that up or found that somewhere. There was a 6-4 game. I'm guessing that was about 2004. Something in that range.
I don't know. I'll be honest. Probably when the game was played, I was watching Sesame Street or Monster Jam.
Monster Jam.
Yeah.
Yeah. I've got kids your age, so I'm familiar. Iowa and Penn State have 2 tremendous defenses, and the offenses are challenged. Will be politically correct and kind in our analysis of the offensive play for Penn State and Iowa. We diced that up for 90 minutes this week with contributors from both sides there. Iowa is turning the ball over, their defense turning over opposing offenses at a ridiculous rate. And just at the time that we were having this conversation this time last week, that there's no way that they can keep up this pace. They forced 7 turnovers against Maryland. They have forced the most turnovers of anybody in the country since Kirk Ferentz took over the program. So they do practice it. It is part of the program. Now, can they keep it up at this rate? I still don't believe so. But this will be part of Iowa football, defensive football, for the rest of the year. It will be an advantage that they have over everyone.
I'm not sure if it's just me, but watching Iowa play defense, they get more tipped interceptions than about anything I've ever seen in my lifetime, especially in that Maryland game. It was like 3 or 4 of those interceptions were tipped passes.
Yep.
I'm not sure if it's the coverage they're using, the tip drill they're working on is elite, but every pass was just felt like tip, tick. And you hardly see that nowadays where it's like that. Usually players just go straight for the ball. So I don't think they're going to be able to keep it up. But I tell you what, if let's say 3 more if they have a +3 turnover differential for each game the rest of the season, they're going to be unstoppable. I know against 2. I mean, what they did with Maryland was shocking. Shocking.
Yeah, I was kind of buying into that being a possible upset, and they put an end to that thought very quickly.
Yeah, they scored 51 points. That was more. That might have been the most surprising part of the game. And they still haven't given. They've only held their opponents, I think it's 24 under for like 35, 36 some games now. That's unbelievable in this day and age. That is elite defense year in and year out. But, I mean, that's all I really got for you, Mark. It was good talking to you, and I'll let the other callers get a word in.
Thank you so much for that, to Real MVP. Enjoy the football this weekend.
Will do. You do the same.
Absolutely. And I believe we'll be back here tomorrow night for another call-in show sometime before or after Arizona State and Stanford, because I got to say, I really want to watch that game. I would like to watch that game. And while I'm taking calls, you got to know that I'm looking at all the comments in the live chat. I am always some combination of amused and intrigued by the comments and the discussions that ensue in the live chat. Mustrick, I feel good for you. Congratulations. That is an awesome thing that you get to attend your first home night game in Lincoln on Saturday with Michigan in town. Been having a hard time sleeping this week. Mustrick, the game will get here. Get your sleep. Calm down. Calm down. Get pumped up on the way to the game. Before that, there's life to live. It is going on Friday, so we're getting there. It's right around the corner, but would love you to be well rested going to the big Nebraska-Michigan game. So, and BYU, again, tonight is more prominent in this live chat than any college football live chat anywhere. I can almost guarantee that. More BYU talk, more. If you're fascinated for some reason, maybe you're Nostradamus or you're George Wells, I think would be the two people. You're more interested and more fascinated by 1984 than is reasonable to the right or sane thinking person, then you've come to the right place as well. This live chat is the live chat to talk about 1984. We can't talk about 1983. And no. Let's not talk about 1985. 1984. That is the year, that is the most important year of college football. So if you're going to get into this live chat, expect to be, be prepared to talk about 1984. Be prepared to defend your position on 1984. Which, of course, the real MVP wasn't even here in 1984. And G-Dog Forever, I appreciate that you've elevated me above the Arby's. It's the roast beef sandwich, basically. That's the staple. That's the standard. That's the commercial I see all the time. And it's not like I'm completely unfamiliar with Arby's, unless they've changed their menu considerably. There was a time in my life when I disposed of quite a bit of Arby's, maybe my early to mid-20s. I remember my second broadcasting job in Mississippi. There was an Arby's down the street from the TV station. And I would stop there quite frequently before and after games. Yes. And I would either go for the roast beef. That's a staple. That's a standard. You go with a roast beef. Maybe you grab 2 roast beefs, because they're not the largest things in the world. They're about the size of a Big Mac. And then you could possibly go for, I don't remember the name of it. It was probably just kind of a standard Italian combo. They opened a Jersey Mike's up the street. I had never been there in my life. I had heard good things about Jersey Mike, and they opened a Jersey's Mike up the street. Is it Jersey's Mike or Jersey Mike's? Jersey Mike's, Jersey's Mike, Jersey Mike's. They opened one of those up the street. They got rid of the Little Caesars when the pandemic or the COVID hit. The pandemic hit about a year and a half ago. Little Caesars, they didn't just shut down. They really shut down. They basically told everyone by putting a sign in the window that they were going to be back and that they were taking orders online, but they left for good. So anyway, so we had a Jersey Mike's move in next to the Five Guys. And I had never been to a Jersey's Mike. Jersey Mike's. Still not sure on that one. Jersey Mike's. So let's see. I've probably been there 4 times in the last 2 weeks now. I'm trying to work on an eating plan because my constant struggle, my constant annoyance every day is figuring out what to eat. And for those who don't want to hear about my trips to Jersey Mike's or my diet, you're going to have to call because we don't have any calls right now. I probably should have announced and sent out the notifications for this hours in advance. So that's my fault. We will be back tomorrow night, Friday night. We'll do a call-in show either before or after the game. I got to say it's going to be before the game. Stanford, Arizona State. I assume that they're playing late. Let's look at week 6 here. Let's do it. So tonight, little love for Coastal Carolina. Sorry that I said it was just Houston and Tulane tonight. I got to admit, I saw nothing of either game. I was recording here, and then I had some conversations that kind of took me away from the TV for quite some time, and never turned on either game. And I flipped on the NFL game, and there you go. Coastal Carolina defeated Arkansas State 52-20. Coastal Carolina, 15th ranked in the country, according to the wonderful AP service that don't know what the hell they're talking about. But basically, Coastal Carolina is number 15 in the country. They beat Arkansas State by 32 points, but there is no way that Coastal Carolina plays any kind of schedule that should be considered for a college football playoff. So this is one of the great problems with college football, that we're going to have a Coastal Carolina possibly be 13-0 with a conference championship game win, but they cannot be placed in the playoff because they will not play a team that could be considered anywhere close to like the top 40 in the nation. So that team cannot go to the playoff, but I believe in earning playoff spots. So I would like to put undefeated teams because that's all they can do. The coaches and the players don't make the schedule. The coaches and the players have no control over the schedule. All they can do is go out there and win football games, and that's what Coastal Carolina is doing. So they should be rewarded for that. They should have an opportunity to win a national championship. But based on the format of only 4 teams, there has to be merit given to the schedule. And they don't play a schedule that they can be selected. They just don't. I would like to see them either the schedules have to change. We've talked about this. I see new people in here all the time, which is a great thing because our channel's growing. You guys have done an amazing job of spreading the word. Let people out there know that we're talking college football here every day, whether you let people know that on social media or the old-fashioned way, just text them. I guess that's the old-fashioned way. Or when you're talking on the phone, say, hey, we're talking college football here with the voice of college football every freaking day, every day in May even. So anyway, that we got to clean up these schedules in college football. That is the only way to determine a reasonable college football playoff that makes sense. Maybe you've heard that phrase come out of my mouth before. Makes sense. Would be nice if it made sense. Look at Arkansas's schedule, then look at Coastal Carolina's schedule. I bet Arkansas is ranked right about where Coastal Carolina is right now. How can we possibly compare those two teams? Arkansas is playing Texas, Georgia, Texas A&M, Ole Miss, Mississippi State, Alabama, LSU, Auburn, and Coastal Carolina is playing basically no one. And Coastal Carolina right now is 15 in the AP rankings. And when the college football selection committee, when the playoff selection committee, when they get together, they're going to have the same issue in trying to determine, okay, what do we do with a 2 or 3 loss team that plays in a real conference versus an undefeated team that plays nobody? So for Coastal Carolina, the Citadel, 52-14. Kansas, and they were trailing in that game for much of the game, 49-22. Buffalo, 28-25 against Buffalo. Would we think about putting Nebraska in the playoff? Would we think that Nebraska is a playoff-worthy team? I think not. It would be a joke. And I know this is only one game comparison, but I think it's pretty accurate in this case. Nebraska wasn't even playing good football at the time. They beat Buffalo 28-3. Coastal Carolina beat Buffalo 28-25. They are the 15th ranked team in the country. Why? Because they're undefeated. There's no consideration really given to their schedule. They're undefeated, so we'll put them in. And they showed us last year that they've got a good football program. And all credit to Jamie Chadwell and Coastal Carolina, because they do have a good football program. They cannot be responsible for the players, and the head coach cannot be responsible for the schedule. They don't make the schedule. They don't control the rest of the conference. Just like Dabo Sweeney likes to say from time to time when the ACC is getting trashed. I got nothing to do with it. So Coastal Carolina has defeated the Citadel, Kansas, Buffalo, UMass. There's a playoff building resume win. UMass 53-3, Louisiana Monroe, who went 0-10 last year. Coastal beat them 59-6, and then tonight at Arkansas State, 52-20. So the rest of the year, they're going to play App State next week. App State lost to Miami. That tells you enough. They're going to play Troy in 2 weeks. They just lost to South Carolina. Then they've got Georgia Southern. They've got Georgia State. They've got Texas State, and they've got South Alabama. Then they will have a conference or a Sun Belt conference championship game after that. So it underlines the mess that is college football. Fix the scheduling. We have done that here at the Voice of College Football, and we'll readdress that during the off season. So if anybody wants to call and ask questions about all of that business, we certainly will take your calls and your questions and comments. But I'm not going to outline my scheduling fix and my conferences and everything I would do. We do that each and every off season. That's why you got to join us during the off season. Be here in the off season. Welcome to the Voice of College Football. Who's on the line?
Hey, how's it going, Mark? This is Emmanuel.
Hey, Emmanuel. What's going on?
Well, my plan for Urban Meyer to be USC's coach almost happened, but I think it will not happen after his recent controversy.
So you think the recent controversy is going to knock him off USC's list? They don't want to deal with that?
Absolutely.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's what I hear, too.
The Jags are going... Yeah, it's unfortunate. I think the Jags, I think he gets fired in about a month from the Jaguars in the upcoming weeks. And I believe he may come back to coaching. He may not coach again, but it's going to be about 2 years before he comes back after the scandal.
Yeah. Look at the coach at the University of Texas right now. He had his issues. And I don't want to try to evaluate or rate or compare issues, but his were a little bit more tangible, a little bit more job impacting for sure. And shoot, he's got one of the top 5 jobs or so in the country. So Urban, and he's never proven, to compare Steve Sarkisian and Urban Meyer is obviously a joke. So with Urban Meyer's ability to coach and lead a program and win championships, you got to think that he will coach again somewhere prominently if he wants to.
Yeah. I mean, even, Bobby Petrino, he went back to Louisville.
Yep.
After his scandal. So it can be done.
And that situation versus Urban Meyer's situation, again, I don't want to lessen or lighten the severity potentially of the Urban Meyer situation and what kind of damage that could do between he and his wife and his family and all of that. But at least on the surface, based on the evidence that we have, there's no comparison between what Urban Meyer did and what Bobby Petrino did.
Yeah, but I mean, it was kind of in that same, area of kind of infidelity to their, because it's a hard sell for an AD to bring someone in for, someone that has that scandal, to bring him in and then have, hey, this is going to be your coach. He's he's unfaithful to his wife, but he's good with X's and O's,
Yeah.
But
What's kind of, yeah. And there's no perfect
It's a
answer
bad
for
mark.
that. There's no perfect judgment for that. There's only one that has that perfect judgment for that. And none of us here on earth have that. So I guess that time heals all wounds and separates those individuals from their transgressions, and then at some point it just feels like it's okay to hire them.
Yeah, absolutely. I got one other question before I let someone call. Unrelated. I'm like a bad comic because my topics are not close to each other. So I was talking to a friend who absolutely hates college football.
Okay.
Loves football, loves the NFL,
Oh, okay.
but hates college football.
Okay.
And his argument was that the games aren't competitive. He said it's always 21 points or above. There's always like Urban Meyer, for example, right now having so much trouble in the NFL. Well, at Ohio State, half of his games, he just had to show up and they're winning by 30, right?
Sure.
So his whole take was, if you look at the scores, one team is just clearly better than the other, and it's really only, for example, right now, Alabama, Georgia, and everybody else is kind of, what they are. It's a two-team race right now.
We think
and
it is. Keep going with your point, then I'll have a counterpoint to that.
Yeah, what would be the counterpoint? What was it good? Because I started looking at the scores.
Well, no, he's okay. So to cover it is that yes, in the NFL, the talent gap is minuscule. Therefore, the games are close. All you have to do is look at the scores of college football games versus NFL games, and he's right. He's right. So on one level, he's right that, and that's one of the reasons why I have the red zone on all Sunday afternoon, and about 3:45 in the afternoon. It's extremely interesting because you got about 8 games being played that were 1 o'clock games that are somewhere halfway into the fourth quarter. And out of those 8, 6 or 7 of them are still competitive games and are going to go down to the wire. And that makes for an exciting sport. In college football, well, we've got a lot more teams playing. So there's no counter argument to his criticism, because he's absolutely right. There is a larger talent gap between teams playing in college football, but there are also not 16 games on a weekend. There are roughly 60 or 65 games. So there are more blowouts, but there are also plenty of competitive games in college football every weekend that have ridiculous finishes, that are exciting, that are full of drama. So yeah, the more teams you have involved and the more games, the greater the disparity of talent, and therefore you're going to have a larger number of blowouts, because you got 60 some teams. You've got 60 some games being played every weekend in college football. And yes, there are the Ohio States of the world that are going to win half or more of their games by 4 or 5 touchdowns. He's exactly right. The point I was making is that we think, like, people are just watching Alabama and Georgia play, and if we didn't know what the recruiting rankings were and didn't know what those two teams were supposed to be, I think that skews people's perception greatly. Not that those teams aren't playing dominant football, but I'm not as quick to jump to the thought that, and I made the same statement a number of times this week, that it appears as though they're playing a completely different sport, because I'm putting together the talent on the roster with the competition on the field and them notching blowouts every week. But I would love to see Iowa, Penn State, and some other teams play Georgia and Alabama. I'm not going to just dismiss it as season over, even though those are the two teams I picked to play in the national championship game.
Yeah, no, I mean, I saw the Arkansas, Georgia game, and Georgia looked phenomenal. I mean, Arkansas, who, you know, took A&M and the Longhorns to the woodshed, they were just literally no production from Arkansas. That defense is the real deal. They can beat Bama. They're that good. I think Bama is slightly better, but that's going to be a heck of a game.
Yeah, it should be. It should be. I still don't really understand your friend. If he truly loves football as much as he says he does, I can't imagine that he just detests college football. He's watching the same players.
He actually does.
He's watching the same players like 2 or 3 years later. So he understands that everybody that he's watching on Sunday played college football.
Yeah. But, you know, it's kind of like most of the players that you're going to see. Well, that's why the NFL is so awesome, because, you know, whatever school, let's say it's a Tulane, they have a star on there. He's in the NFL, and whatever star is at University of Louisiana, and every team is just full of mega athletes, you know. And at that level, it's just incredible. The NFL is really the ultimate project. But, you know, like you said, you know, with all the games that there are, I enjoy college football. But after he said that, it really got me thinking. he kind of has a point.
Oh, the point's
right,
obvious.
Mark.
He hasn't really uncovered anything that's not obvious.
Mm-hmm. No, not at all. Not at all.
Just look at the two
all
games
right, Mark,
tonight,
well,
52-20, 40-22. There you go.
Yeah, exactly. There you go.
All right.
All right, Mark. Hey, awesome talking to you.
Appreciate it.
Take care. Bye. Hey.
All right, let's keep moving along here. The voice of college football. Yeah, the NFL, college football. I would think that most people love both. Most. Welcome in. Who's on the line?
This is Tom from Iowa.
Hey, Tom.
Hey, Mark, listening to you tonight. I just called because I just want to rant on college football a little bit.
Okay.
From Iowa, big game coming up.
Yeah.
It wouldn't have mattered whether they're both ranked 23rd and 24th. If they're unbeaten, it's a big game. It doesn't matter about the ranking.
Amen. Thank you for that comment. Absolutely.
And when it comes down to it, I've listened to some, of course, big preview shows, and kind of thing that really bugs me. And of course, you know, the lines move to point, so we know where the money's going. When they come down to it, they're the guys that are picking, and of course, I know it's ratings and getting people to listen, but you know, they come down to, well, Penn State's got more talent. Well, how many ball players on the Iowa team would everybody like to have? There's a lot of ball players on there that can play in a lot of other Division I ball teams. And when it comes down to this game Saturday, if you as a betting man, you're going to bet on this game, you're crazy. It's a pick 'em. It'd be a terrible investment. Terrible. Just a pick 'em. And when it comes down to it, nobody wants to talk about the penalties that Maryland goofed up on. I think it's all turnovers. And then on top of that, look at the Florida-Kentucky game. What blew it for Florida in the end was some penalties. You got to come to the game. You got to be focused. And if Iowa comes to the game and they're focused, or if it's Penn State, the team that's going to win that game is the one that's going to come to play and play right. And that's going to be the difference in the game. What do you think, Mark?
I think that after 5 weeks of football, we generally know how good these teams are, especially since these teams have been a little bit more battle tested than most because they played better schedules than most. Penn State against Wisconsin, Auburn, and to a lesser extent, Indiana. And then, of course, Iowa's played Iowa State, Indiana, and then Maryland last week. And I believe that I've got a good read on how good these teams are. I'll be surprised if it's not a close game and not a leaning defensive game, leaning in that direction. But I don't know who I'm going to pick to win the game. I think it's a toss-up. I do understand the thought that Penn State probably has more talent on the roster. I think that's confirmed by recruiting rankings, but it doesn't mean anything. It doesn't necessarily play out. There's all sorts of teams that are better than other teams that have better recruited talent because these players turn out many times to be different players 2 and 3 years into the program. And so, I don't think the original talent discrepancy means anything in this game at all. I think what means something is that they're playing at Iowa City, and I'm not a big proponent of looking at where the game is being played. It means something, but I think this is one of the tougher places to play in college football, and Iowa's proven that down through the years.
I wonder what you think. Do you think Iowa has a coaching advantage? I think they do.
That's a great question. I know that James Franklin,
nobody's talked about it.
He has had a handful of games in his career that made anybody who really looks at strategy and clock management and game management scratch their heads and wonder what he was thinking. Yeah, he has some gaffes. I can't think of the Iowa coaching staff or Kirk Ferentz having that same issue. So, yeah, I would give the Iowa coaching staff an advantage, or at least the head coach an advantage. I think that Iowa has a better game coach than Penn State.
Yeah. And if Iowa would have like a 14-point lead at half, they'll just sit on the ball second half, run that clock out, make your mistakes on the other team. They'll just try to grind it out. Something like that. If they'd happen to be ahead, it'll all be clock management most of the game.
So it sounds like you're pretty confident Iowa's going to win the game.
I have no idea. I hope so. I was scared going into the Maryland game, and I actually was listening to it, and I had to call a friend of mine. I said, after the third interception, I was like, is Maryland throwing the game? Because I thought they would play them a lot tougher. I was actually scared on that game going into it. And I don't know. Iowa, I'm scared of we could have a turnover, be a big turnover like a pick six or something, we're due. Or sometimes we get them penalty calls that gives Penn State another chance to make that third and 5. Do you see what I mean? And gives them a first down, that pass interference. Those plays every play is going to be so huge in this game. So huge. Every play of the game.
Well, there's no doubt the closer the game and the closer the score is to 0, the lower the score, the more meaningful every play is. When you've got a 48-45 game, then we know that both teams are just going to score. So sure, mistakes mean something, but they're not as critical because
Right.
teams are erasing 3rd and 15s left and right. But not in this game.
But, and I mean, I wouldn't be one to tell you, I wouldn't throw our quarterback under the bus, but I wouldn't brag him up.
Yeah.
You know,
I agree.
Don't know a lot about him, and I sure wouldn't be one to badmouth him. And I'm not one of these. If the coach has got him playing, he's probably gives us the best chance to win. There probably ain't another one, you know. So I'm not one that wants the backup. But yeah, I'm ready for it to be over.
You're ready, not ready for kickoff to enjoy the game. You're ready for it to be over.
Yeah, be ready for the next game.
Okay.
I'm ready to get it over with, and one way or the other, whether it's not the end of the season. When the season started, you know, I mean, I still don't believe even if Iowa wins the game, I wouldn't bet money on them being undefeated. You know, and same way goes for Penn State. You know, it's at the end of the year. You know, I wouldn't even bet on Georgia and Alabama being undefeated by the end of the year. It's hard to win 12 football games and be perfect with 18 to 22, 23-year-olds to be perfect every week. That's not an easy thing to do. It's a grind. Keeping them up. Coaches all got to be perfect. It's a hard thing to do.
If Iowa wins the game, they're going to be much closer to being undefeated than Penn State, though.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Yep. Yeah. No, it looks good, you know, but just got to keep winning. Just keep winning 1 week at a time. But
right.
I was 3 weeks ago. I'm not here to tell you I was the 5th best team in the nation, or the 3rd or whatever, but who are you going to put ahead of them? And if you're from Iowa, when they let's face it, they're talking about us every day all week. If we would have lost one game before this, wouldn't be as much talk, you know. And it's good when they're talking about your program and you get recruits that want to come play here. So, you know, this is good for Iowa, and hopefully we keep going on. But it doesn't come around every year.
No, it seems to come around about every 5 or so.
Yeah, and when it comes, you enjoy it. You enjoy it. Remember that. Just like college football as a whole, we don't know where college football is going to go from here. You just need to sit back and enjoy this season. You know,
yeah, and I am.
Change.
I think it's been fun to see other teams in the mix and more unpredictable than it's been for quite some time. All right. Well, I appreciate the call.
Yep. Bye.
You have a good night. Bye-bye.
Yep.
Next up, hear the voice of college football. Let's see who's on the line.
What's up, Mark?
Hey, DeAndre. What's going on?
DeAndre. I'm chilling, man. So I think it was like 2 callers ago. I'm trying to get the conversation straight. He said his friend said that the NFL is better than college football.
His friend, who apparently loves football, just loves football, can't get enough football, hates college football. Well, that doesn't even make any sense, of course. But that he just thinks that the NFL is so much better than college football because there are too many blowouts in college football.
I think there's more blowout with the bigger schools. I mean, I'll give you an example. Everybody says Clemson's having a down year this year, according to Clemson standards. But they just played Georgia to what? If it wasn't for an INT, a 10-3 game, and they got taken. They went to overtime against NC State, who probably brought back most of their talent from last year. So I just, some of that stuff is just. I just think the NFL is like. I give you an example. I'm a Steelers fan. I just love the Steelers. I don't root for any other NFL team to win. I like to see maybe the Bears because of the '85 Bears or Or, I might like to see them do good when the Steelers are not doing good. But in college football, Clemson team I mainly root for, but there's other teams I tune in to watch play, if not just for the misery of watching their fans lose, like Florida State and Miami. I just tune in and be like, hey, man, they lost, ha, or stuff like that. Maybe the Cowboys are on that level that people just love to see them lose. But, I mean, NFL is loving, but I just think college football has so much more variety. You might go get a wishbone. I'll give you an example. Rice, for most of my life, has been a dumpster fire. I'm not going to say they're great. I mean, they're a good team, but seem like they're more competitive than most years that they do. That might just pop up and think like, hey, Rice is doing decent this year. They played Arkansas pretty good, and they got blown out by Texas. Arkansas blew out Texas. So, I think it's easier to keep up. Like when you see stuff flash across the screen, like, wow, Southern Cal lost to Oregon State. Like maybe when Chad Johnson was there, they might have beat USC, but how often does that happen? It's like, wow, when was the last time Oregon State beat USC in the Coliseum? And everybody's like, 1962. And everybody's just amazed at that. Nobody says, when's the last time the Redskins beat Pittsburgh? I mean, I know they did it last year. I know because I'm a Steelers fan. But I just think that, it's college football is more amazing sports and about statistics and about the history. Where the NFL, the Carolina Panthers all of a sudden doing good this year. And, nobody's rushing to be a Carolina Panthers fan. There's nobody on that team that you really, really root for, like you do in college football. Like, yay, this year, Tulane is playing decent football. You see that up Coastal Carolina, that's a story. Nobody really cares if the Cardinals are winning. Kyler Murray is a transcendent player, but like, wow, who's this Coastal Carolina team? They're the best team in South Carolina with two schools that got way bigger budgets and tradition than they do. It's like, I mean, even Wofford might have a bigger football tradition than Coastal Carolina. Coastal Carolina right now is the best team in the Carolina.
DeAndre, let me make sure that I heard something correctly. Are you telling me that more people care about Coastal Carolina football than the Arizona Cardinals?
No, what I'm saying is that's probably a bigger story, like a shock factor. People probably will say, well, we expect for the Arizona Cardinals to do good because they had Kyler Murray. They also had Andre Hopkins and J.J. Watt. I can't remember the other guy's name. But, I mean, they've been very decent over the last couple of years. Coastal Carolina came out of nowhere to be decent. I'm not saying that more people care, but I'm just saying it's a bigger story, in my opinion, for the average football fan. The Cardinals were terrible in the 80s and 90s, but in the 2000s, they've been pretty decent. It's just an amazing story.
I bet if we asked the people that watch this channel or just college football fans across the board, most of them would have a soft spot in their heart for Coastal Carolina. They would feel as though this is a good, like you just said, that this is a fun story. It's a good story. They went 11-1 last year. They kind of broke onto the scene. People paid attention to them, and they're continuing to be a good team this year. I'd be willing, though, to bet that almost none of those people have watched a Coastal Carolina game this year.
Nope. But I bet you they don't watch the Arizona Cardinals game. But I bet you they're tracking Coastal Carolina.
Well, there's a whole lot more people watching Arizona Cardinals games than Coastal Carolina games. It's not even close. DeAndre.
But what I'm saying is, yeah, go ahead. Hello?
Yes.
No, I was listening.
What's that, DeAndre?
Hello?
Go ahead.
I said I was listening to you.
Well, I was just making the point that,
Oh,
a lot of people say that they're interested in things, but they're not really that interested. And again, Coastal Carolina, I think that the average college football fan has a soft spot in their heart for a Coastal Carolina because they think it's a good story and it's cute and it's nice that somebody's come out of nowhere and splashed onto the scene. But I'm guessing that almost no one has watched these games. The TV ratings will show us that nobody's watching these games.
No, I haven't watched them, but I know that they're winning.
Sure. Nobody's watching Coastal Carolina. Nobody's watching Coastal Carolina play Louisiana Monroe and UMass and Troy every week.
No, I haven't watched East Carolina play this year, and I went there. I haven't watched it. Like, oh, they 3-2. What did they have?
The other thing I got to ask you, DeAndre, the other thing I got to ask you is that if Clemson played Coastal Carolina this Saturday and you had to bet on that game, who do you think would win?
Probably Clemson.
Okay. Because you were just telling me a few minutes ago that Coastal Carolina is the best team in the state.
Yeah, by record, yeah. Hey, the record says who you are, right?
But they're not the best team in the state necessarily. We'll never know because they're not going to play Clemson. But you just said it. I would say the same thing, that if Coastal Carolina plays Clemson, I'm not even thinking twice about who's going to win that game.
I don't know. It's a step up in talent, but I mean, Clemson struggled with Troy. I mean, we all thought that was going to be a blowout, and we see what happened. Troy
I'm not saying it couldn't happen.
Yeah. Okay. Well, I forgot Wake Forest is in North Carolina. They're 4-6 in the Carolina stuff.
That's why when I reviewed the Coastal Carolina game tonight, that they won this game and they're number 15 in the country, I don't know what that number 15 in the country really. I really don't know how to evaluate that because they've played such a horrible schedule, and I credit them for winning the games. That's all they can do is win the games. But how do we evaluate them? They don't play anybody. The best team on their schedule this season is going to be like App State.
Mm-hmm. Who almost beat Miami.
They almost beat Miami, and Miami's no good. So,
you know what I don't get, Mark, and I don't want to seem like I'm taking shots at Miami fans. I listen to some of your people talk, and not just like Miami people or like what's the dude that used to come on your show a lot? Was it Zoe? He has his own show. He's pretty big.
Yeah,
he's kind of rough around the edges.
Yeah,
but great
Alonzo.
guy. But I listen to this show sometimes.
Okay.
Yeah, so I listen to this show sometimes, and I kind of wonder why does these people think that Lane Kiffin or what's the guy Oregon?
Mario Cristobal.
Why would they leave Mario Cristobal? Why would they leave Miami? Why would they leave their schools to go to Miami? Because Ole Miss, just by the TV contract, seems like they have more money than Miami does. And, you got Phil Knight with Oregon. I don't know what Willie Taggart was doing, but I guess it was the dream coach at Florida State. But I wonder why they think some of these guys will leave, like Luke Fickle. Why would he leave Cincinnati to go to Miami? And I'm not saying that it's I just think Miami has held on to those gadgets. Like, okay, you scored a touchdown. Why do you need a touchdown? Okay, yeah, it's cute. You want to attract people. and stuff like that. But why do you need a touchdown ring and this necklace? I don't think people want to go down there. 'Cause I think I heard your boy. I can't remember his name, but you do his shows on Wednesday. I think I heard y'all say that Miami, that the D.R. King had the most NIL deals out of everybody in the country. And I said, yeah, that's true. But how much faith are they going to keep on putting in these guys if they keep losing like that? And like it might make it rough for the next athlete that comes along and stuff like that to get that deal. So I just don't know why they think that somebody would jump up and go down to Miami to coach, because it's like I heard some of them say, here's more things. Well, it wasn't on your show or somebody else's show. Here's more things to do than football in Miami. Because if you go to Jacksonville, Florida, where Gainesville, Florida, all it is football. There's nothing to do there on a Saturday night or Friday night like it is, outside of football. The whole town is football that day. Miami, I can go to the beach. I can go look at girls. I can go to South Beach. You go to Clemson, all you got is football, or Alabama, or I don't know about Ole Miss, but that's pretty much, those teams are college towns. Because my cousin Virgil Johnson, he played with Ball at Virginia Tech, at Georgia Tech, and I had an interesting conversation. I had always asked you this, like, one reason why I think ACC schools struggle is because a lot of the ACC schools are in cities like Boston College, Georgia Tech, Miami. NC State got a real big campus, but some of them are located inside the city. So I wondered if that's why they struggle so much. And I always wondered if that's why Miami struggles so much, because it's hard to get to the stadium from the campus. Outside of there's other things to do than watch the football game. And only time, even when they play Clemson, I have never seen that stadium full unless they were playing maybe Notre Dame the last time they played. And I bet you most of those people that were in there were Notre Dame fans. I never see that place full. And I wonder, does that have something to do with Miami having so many issues? Even Tulane has built their own campus stadium. So I always wondered that, does that have something to do with the lack of growth in some of these schools? Georgia Tech has a good following because it's got a lot of football history. Not saying Miami doesn't, but they when they're good, those guys turn out. Even when they're bad, that place, you look at it sometimes, it's a full stadium, and I don't know where Georgia Tech Stadium is located. I don't know if it's on campus or not. I think the last day they played in the Georgia Dome for some reason, or they played at what's that place called? The Falcons home stadium. I think they played Carolina there. And I don't know why they played that game there. I guess it's some deal they got. But I just always wondered that does that have something to do with it, that their stadium is not on campus and they don't have great facilities. So I think I even heard one of your guys say, the guys that you talked to, say, hey, Oregon State's building an $80 million stadium, $80 million complex, and Miami's building like a $14 million complex. You can't tell me that Miami doesn't have more football tradition than Oregon State does. Even Oregon. Oregon has got Phil Knight. So I have always wondered that.
I got you, DeAndre. Well, I appreciate the call.
Yeah.
You have a good
night. All right, Mark. You have an excellent. You too.
All right. The one thing I will say about that call, I could say a number of things, but every fan base, not meaning every fan base overrates its own team and puts their team at a higher place than they actually are. That's the nature of being a fan. And I'm not talking about every specific fan in every fan base, but when you put them all together, there is a high number of people, high percentage of people within any fan base that overrate their program. They think it's better than it actually is. They think it should be better. They think that they're going to attract better coaches than what is the reality. So the Miami fan base is no different than any other fan base. They overrate their program. And I had to make this statement the other day because I just got tired of hearing how Miami is playing down to its opponents. That, Miami's looking at the likes of Virginia and Virginia Tech and Georgia Tech and Wake Forest and all these teams that they play in the ACC, and that they're playing down to them. Well, they've been playing down to them for over 15 years. So at this point, they're not playing down to them. That's who they are. That's who they are. Miami is Louisville, Georgia Tech, Pitt, fill in the blank. That's who they are. Until proven otherwise, that's who they are. That's their football program. Their football program is Louisville. It's Wake Forest. It's Georgia Tech. It's Pitt. And on given years, like this year, they're not even as good as Wake Forest or some of those other teams. And they're better than some, of course. All right. And I think that the Miami argument can be made in both directions, more so than a lot of other programs across the board, because of the 5 national championships and the elite play in the past, that you can view them in 2 different lights. Well, welcome to the Voice of College Football. Who's on the line?
This is Jeremiah.
Hey, Jeremiah.
I was wondering what you were thinking about the Texas game 2 days out. Just curious to see what you think the Oklahoma defense, because lately I've been hearing from OU fans and sources that they think that their defense is world-beating good, yet we've yet to see that all season. They got 35 points scored by Tulane. Their points per game on the offense is inflated because of Western Carolina. And I just wonder what you think of Oklahoma overall. I know you don't think that very highly of them because they haven't played anybody and they haven't played very well. But I don't know if you think your favorite is Texas or your favorite Oklahoma in this matchup.
So I don't know if you've heard the other callers. So we've had quite a few conversations about Oklahoma and Texas. So I don't know at what point you jumped on. So I don't want to be too repetitive for everybody that's listening. I think Texas has some issues along the offensive front. I think that may cost them in this game, but I think Bijan Robinson makes up for much of that. Every running back needs an offensive line. Every running back needs an offensive line, but he needs less of one than just about anyone. The guy's incredible. I am impressed with Texas's weapons on the outside, Xavier Worthy, Josh Moore, and others. And the quarterback's playing well, Casey Thompson. I think that the Texas defense, I saw about half of the TCU game. They got battered against Arkansas. We'll see if Oklahoma's got the same ability up front to push Texas around. I would have thought at the beginning of the season. So if at the beginning of the season, you would have told me that Arkansas bloodied Texas, just beat them to shreds up front, just beat them to hell up front, I would think that Oklahoma would be able to do the same. But this Oklahoma offensive line is not playing like that. They're playing substandard football. So I don't have a particular lean. Of course, I'm going to make a prediction on the game, as I always do. But I see definite strengths and weaknesses. I don't see this matchup the way I would have 6 weeks ago, that Oklahoma is clearly the better team. I don't think they're playing like the better team. I think that the results are pretty inconclusive. Texas played one really good football team. They got buried by 3 scores. They've played a couple of decent teams like Texas Tech and TCU. They obliterated Texas Tech, of course, and I saw some of that game. And the TCU game, like I said, I saw about half that game. And even though it was a 5-point game, Texas was clearly the better team. While Oklahoma has played a lot of teams in that same Texas Tech TCU range, Nebraska, Kansas State, etc., West Virginia, and they have just barely slipped by all of them. So Texas is playing slightly better football. I still got to think that Oklahoma's got a better team. Texas has certainly played the better team, meaning Arkansas, of anybody on either team's schedule. And I got to think that the vibe, the attitude for the Texas football team, and this is just conjecture, that the vibe and attitude for Texas football in that locker room is much better than Oklahoma. Oklahoma seems to be playing a bit with a lack of confidence, and there seems to be a lot of grumbling and a lot of dissension within that team from what I hear. We do an Oklahoma show every Wednesday, and we talked about it yesterday, that there are a lot of reports of just guys that aren't bought in and not playing particularly hard, not playing for the team, and there's a bit of dissension in the ranks at Oklahoma.
Yeah. I also think that an underestimated thing is I don't know how the teams are going to react to a filled Red River Showdown game, because last year it was very few people were there and the atmosphere wasn't like it normally is. And this year it's going to be jam packed. It's going to be loud. And Rattler was kind of rattled last year, and there wasn't really many people there. So I don't know if he's going to relapse what happened last season. He's been playing much better than he did then, but you never know. And I think some of we keep our eyes on Bijan. I think people underestimate our other two backs in Roschon and Keelan. Keelan is extremely fast, and I think that people are forgetting about him. And if they load the box and try and stop Bijan, I think there's some ways that we can spread out the field and force them to go play back in coverage, and then Bijan's going to just go through a tear. I just don't know if Oklahoma has a defense like they have the last couple of years, where they've been stacking Sam Ehlinger 10 times every single game. I don't think that's going to happen this year. I don't know what your take on that is.
Well, it's a good point about the running backs. So when I have tuned into Texas football, which I told you about the Texas Tech and TCU games, I also saw about half of the Louisiana game, and I watched all the Arkansas game that was worth watching. That, especially the last couple of weeks, every time I tune into the Texas game, I'm even more so impressed. Not that Bijan Robinson's not one of the best running backs, if not the best in college football, but in the red zone, it seems as though they've gone to Rashawn Johnson quite a bit, and I think he's a great complimentary back. And we had a conversation this week with our Texas guy, and he said the same thing about Keelan Robinson, that for straight ahead speed, he's the man. So that could be very difficult for Oklahoma to stop those three guys. And then again, yes, the Texas offensive line is an issue, but I think they're less of an issue than they would be for most offenses because of the running back talent.
Yeah. I think the O-line has been playing better every single game since Arkansas. I think in Arkansas they kind of completely destroyed. They showed some weaknesses at Louisiana in the first game of the season, but every single game they've gotten significantly better at blocking. We don't know how good those teams' defenses are, but they could be decent because Oklahoma barely beat West Virginia, and they got beat by Texas Tech. I don't think losing Okafor is as big of a hit on the O-line as people might think. I think Carrick is equal, maybe slightly better, and that's just what we've seen as fans. But the coaches know more than we do. I think the O-line might be stronger than some people expect, and that might be something that throws a hair into a lot of people's predictions.
All right, good stuff. Well, I appreciate the call.
All right. Thanks.
Have a good one. Let's keep it moving here at the Voice of College Football. I want to remind everyone that pick your team, and we most likely have a post-game show for you. Ohio State, Michigan, Nebraska, Penn State, Iowa, Oklahoma, Texas, Texas A&M, Alabama, Georgia, Florida, LSU, Miami, Florida State, Clemson, Virginia Tech. We've got post-game shows and Notre Dame as well with all those teams. So please lock it in here at the Voice of College Football on Saturday. And, of course, I'm here all day on Saturday as well, taking your calls and comments and questions. Welcome to the Voice of College Football. Who's on the line?
Hi, Mark. It's Ben.
Hey, Ben.
Hey, well, couple things that you brought up. I would like to get back to. I like the point you made about the way fans are and the way the fan bases in general tend to overestimate their team. I like that point. I'll swing back to it if I can. But actually, I called it the other night, and I don't know if you guys talked about post this week, the results of maybe what this week may be for the Big Ten. And so we have Iowa and Penn State playing. You know, they're obviously in the 3 and 4 position. And my question is, how far do you see one of those teams dropping with a close game?
Well,
the reason I ask that is because Oregon dropped 4 spots, losing to Stanford. They dropped 4 of the AP poll, and that's to Stanford, which I haven't been impressed with what I've seen out of Stanford this year.
Okay.
What do you think would happen if Penn State loses to Iowa State or vice versa?
All right. First point I've got to make. Let's make this very clear to everyone listening right now. We got about 100 people on the line here. 117 to be exact. Hopefully about 5,000 people will watch this, and hopefully they will hear this statement. The polls are garbage. Okay, so that's point number 1. Who cares where anybody's ranked? The polls are garbage. They don't make any sense. My poll doesn't mean anything. I will clearly state that. Of course, it doesn't affect or impact anything. I take a lot of care to it, and it's not perfect or flawless, but I do believe that it makes sense and obviously has a method to it. So understand that this is not 1995 or 2005 or fill in the year prior to the playoff era where these polls mean anything, because they're going to be wiped away in just a couple of weeks once that playoff committee starts releasing their top 25, which is going to be sometime in mid-October. We're only about 2 weeks away from the release of the first college football playoff rankings. So once those rankings are released, the AP, the coaches poll, mine, everybody's don't mean anything. They don't impact anything.
So you don't think that the AP or the coaches poll impact the college football playoff?
So that's funny that you say that. That's funny that you say that, because as soon as I stated that, the next phrase out of my mouth was going to be, we don't know. We don't know. Would it impact me? No, because I don't even look at them. So I'm not impacted by the AP and the coaches poll because I don't even see them. I don't even know what they are until people start talking about it once I release my rankings. But I'm not impacted by it. I would hope not, but I am not going to state that one way or the other. You may be, probabilities tell us that most likely somebody, if not multiple people on that committee, are impacted by the polls. The polls affect all of our thinking. If we would just end a college football season and there would be absolutely no polls, no rankings by anybody, and we would just go into the next season, we would look at these teams differently. There's no question about that.
No question at all.
If we just grabbed a random team in college football that wasn't an elite team, but somebody else, Stanford or somebody like that, Kansas State or Missouri, and said, this team beat Tulane 40-35, and they beat West Virginia 16-13 on a last-second field goal, and they beat Kansas State by 6 points. They beat Nebraska at home by a touchdown. Where should they be ranked? nobody's going to be raising their hand saying, oh, this is the 5th or 6th best team in the country. But that's what we're doing with Oklahoma. That's where they're ranked because they're Oklahoma.
Yeah.
But that's their resume.
Yeah.
And if they were Stanford or Arizona State or somebody else, TCU, they wouldn't be ranked where they're ranked with the same exact resume. So that just underlines my first point. The polls are stupid.
Yeah. Well, and I agree. I mean, I agree, but I've seen in the past with the college football rankings, I've seen, I don't think they go with the system that you go by as a resume and look at, because I've seen kind of some things that I thought were some big outliers when it came to the way the college football committee ranked certain teams. And then, and that's kind of, one of the points. And it's one of the things that kind of makes me nervous coming from the Big Ten, because I think the SEC gets, it gets more of a benefit of a doubt than maybe a Big Ten team. In this year, we have, according to your rankings, 5 teams? According to a resume ranking, we would have 5 teams in the top 10. And we have, even in the AP poll, we have 4 teams and 1 knocking on the door.
Yeah.
And then they have to beat up on each other.
And let's take the SEC, for example. I believe that the SEC is the best conference. I believe that, but based on a lot of things that have nothing to do with the results on the field. I believe that because we see the recruiting rankings every year, and the talent has to mean something on the rosters, and we see the NFL draft selections. And then based on the play on the field this year, it's probably the best, but it's not decisive at all. I've posted a number of videos comparing these conferences based on just the results on the field. That's all we should be going by. And the Big Ten's 8-6 against the Power 5, and the SEC 6-5, and there are no substantial wins there. Texas is probably the best win by the SEC, and they've beaten Louisville and NC State. I'm not coming up with any other great wins by the SEC. Alabama beat Miami. We see what that's worth. Miami might be the 50th best team in the country. That means nothing. LSU lost to UCLA.
Michigan State beat Miami.
Michigan State beat Miami, but I'm just talking about the SEC right now being
you're just talking about SEC.
Being considered the best conference in America. So my point is that making a reasonable evaluation of the SEC based on a lot of factors, I still think it's reasonable to think that it's the best conference. But if we're just basing it on what has happened on the field, it's not definitive by any stretch of the imagination. Them going 6-5 against the Big Ten, the ACC, the Big 12, and the Pac-12 is not showing me that they're definitely the best conference in America. But because of our perception, and because what we think, those teams are going to be given that advantage.
Yeah, and I don't even disagree with the SEC being the best conference. I think they have 2 of the best teams this year, and so much talent that comes out of there. That's true. I look at that, but I just don't think. I think when fans tend to look at the SEC, they think it's overpoweringly dominant than the rest of the conferences. And I think the Big Ten especially is right there with them. I mean, I think you could make a case for the Big Ten, at least, especially this year.
Absolutely. If we're just ranking and evaluating the conferences based on the results on the field and the performance, it's really indistinguishable between the SEC and the Big Ten.
Yeah, and that was kind of one of the things I was kind of wanted to talk with you about and get your thoughts on it. And the other thing is, I've been watching Steve Dace for a while, and when you were talking about, I've watched Steve Dace for years now, and I was just really love the show at first, and I think he kind of fell victim a little bit to overvaluing Michigan or setting that standard high and not. When I watch his show now, I feel bad for him because he loves Michigan and I love Michigan football too. But I see a lot of fans, my brother's like that included. And by the way, a shout out to my brother because I think he's a new subscriber to you as of today.
Good for your brother.
My brother kind of falls into that.
All right.
He likes your show. He's actually sent me a couple of YouTube like, hey, check this out, what this guy has to say. I was like, yeah, man, you got to subscribe to him. It's great.
I appreciate that.
So try to spread the word, man. My brother talks to a lot of people, so if he starts, he'll get a few more people at least, and hopefully that'll spread for you.
Get him on board.
But anyway, yeah. But anyways, he's one of these people that they look at Michigan as the Michigan of the 80s and 90s. Instead of the Michigan as today. You could look at the program as a whole and say, yeah, they've got more wins and I think the second highest winning percentage as of now, but it's not the reality of today. And I look at, I look at the way they play. And I see, people are down on Harbaugh, but the guys averaging, only 3 losses a season, even with last year. They have, since his career, they have 15 losses. Since 2016, if you counted the year before, I think there were 3 losses. And they say 2016, 5 seasons, 15 losses. That's 3 losses a season. I mean, that's pretty good by, by any college, not Clemson, Alabama, or Ohio State, or maybe Georgia now this year. But anyways, yeah. So that point, I see a lot of people and a lot of people like overvaluing their teams, and I think it makes interesting arguments for people that tend to be a little bit less, a little bit more grounded to what the reality of the situation is. And I think that's what makes college football so great.
Absolutely. Fan is short for fanatic.
Yeah, we tend to forget that.
There you go.
All right. Well, I'm going to let you go. Let the next guy get on the line. And it's been nice talking to you. I have a lot. I could rant all day, but I ranted enough last time, and I get long-winded. But I'll catch you later, Mark. And you're doing a great job, man.
I appreciate
Love
that.
the show.
You have a good night. All right. There's a comment made by, let's see. I just highlighted it. We've got Robert saying that the SEC produces the most NFL players by a mile. Okay. Current NFL rosters. So depending on what you consider to be a mile. For the 2021 NFL season, the SEC has 335 players on NFL rosters, 335, Big Ten 266. So if you want to size that down, that's 33 for every 26. The ACC 208. So that's 33 compared to 26 compared to 20, roughly. Okay. The Pac-12 and the Big 12 are difficult, more difficult because obviously there are less teams in the conference. So the Pac-12 has 159, but there are only 12 teams in the Pac-12. So you got to do the division by 12 instead of 14 per team, per school, producing NFL players. In the Big 12, of course, with only 10 teams. That's 138 for the Big 12. So do the math out there. That's SEC 335, Big 10 266, ACC 208. All those conferences have 14 members. Then you got the Pac-12 with 159 with 12, and the Big 12 with 10 and 138 NFL players. So I think it's not substantial. It's decided. It's a decided gap. 335 versus 266. I don't think it's crazy. That's what it's been forever. That's what it's been for a long, long time. This has been holding up for about 20 years, at least. So the SEC produces the most NFL players in the Big Ten, number 2, and that's about what the gap's been. It is held pretty steady in that range, 33-26. There you go. All right. Next up here, the voice of college football. You could look up that same statistic 10 years ago and you'd see almost the exact gap. Welcome. Who's on the line?
Wow. Welcome to the voice of college football. Who's on the line? Landbound. Good morning.
That was quite the introduction there.
I had to top the 7th inning stretch Notre Dame fight song that I did for y'all to keep the show pushing.
We're going to place it in your hands then. Yes, that was well done.
Place what in my hands? No. Oh, no. I may have a tenor voice, but I'm not as arrogant as MarkRogersTV top 25. That makes sense. To put yourself in the same sentence as the coaches poll and the AP poll, which you just did.
No, I'm not putting. No. Whoa. Let's not confuse things. I'm not lowering myself to put myself on the level of the AP or the coaches poll, because they do a crappy job putting together rankings. No, don't put me in the same sentence as them. Please do not lower me to that whatsoever. Not at all. No. No. I don't want to be placed in the same category as a poll that ranked, okay, Kansas State. Listen to this example. Kansas State was 3-0. They beat Stanford by 3 scores. Stanford beat USC by 3 scores. USC's 2-1, Kansas State's 3-0, and USC's ranked ahead of Kansas State. I'm not that much of an idiot.
No.
I am not a freaking idiot like the AP voters who are going to vote a 2-1 USC team above a 3-0 Kansas State team that by those comparisons trashed USC. I'm not going to do that.
I'm not even. No, that's not what I'm thinking right now. What I'm thinking right now is you reprimanded Foot, the BYU fan, for using 7 degrees of separation, and that's what you just did. Pretty much. To justify yourself.
Okay, there might be a bit of a difference between 7 degrees of separation and 2 degrees of separation. Yeah.
Mark Rogers, top 25, that makes sense. It's like saying I'm smarter than the coaches and AP poll. That's the way I see it.
First of all, if you understood about the process, you would know that the coaches don't even vote in that poll. Very few of them even look at that ballot, have anything to do with that ballot. They have a sports information director fill out the ballot. So there are probably a certain number of coaches that fill out that ballot or did during the preseason. And then after that, they're too busy. They don't care, or they give some kind of instruction that if they are the coach of a particular team, you know what, make sure that so-and-so's ranked here. Make sure so-and-so's ranked below us because that's our rival. We don't like them. Knock them down. The rest of it, fill out however you want. That's the truth.
I hear you.
I've been around sports information departments in the SEC, and they've said, oh, Coach Tommy Tuberville told me to fill this out. Coach Jackie Sherrill told me to fill this out.
And I'm glad you mentioned that you've been around sports departments, because I've been watching you for a long time, Mark. And so you don't think, and I know I want to commend you right now, so you don't think that I'm attacking you, even though probably the majority of the calls that you get, you handle them so well. because most of them are like an attack style, and you just you do better than deflect. I mean, you spar and you get involved, and you do it in a way that's great. And you give a lot of people a voice, I think. For me, this is like fulfilling I grew up listening to sports talk radio, and I thought I would never be able to do something like that. So this kind of, I don't want to say childhood dream because that sounds corny, but it kind of does. And when you say, I wasn't going to call, I was debating, and then I jumped up when you said Miami's not good. Can I tell you how I think you see Miami? I've been watching you for 3 years now. Unlike Ryan Rustillo and Scott Van Pelt, who I listen to speak about Miami football on his podcast, and unlike the fellow from Fox Sports, I forgot his name, Colin Cowherd, who I listen to speak about multiple times about Miami on his show.
Yep.
National television. You seem to look at Miami down from your nose. This is how I see you. This is how I see you looking at Miami relative to the other guys at your level. Okay. We maybe had a decade of dominance. We haven't been relevant in 15 years. You just said it. We're not good. And we're just like some island that's really not even part of the United States. And we just got really lucky for a few years.
Okay.
Other than that, we don't count. But if I may say this, wait, just 1 second.
Okay.
Because this is what I really want to say. I look to see your subscriber base. We have every other college football team by 2, pound for pound. The only one that's beating us is an entire conference, and that's the SEC. I think you take us for granted a little bit, if you ask me.
Is it my turn?
It's your show.
Okay.
What do you mean?
All right. So everything that you stated initially, up until the point that you said something about, it seems as though I think that Miami got lucky and that they should be considered some type of island. However you stated that, I didn't know where that came from. So the other points I could agree with. Not relevant for 16 years, average, on the level of Wake Forest, Virginia Tech, Louisville, all those points, absolutely. Right now, this Miami football program, yes, I will agree with everything you stated about your evaluation of what I think of Miami football, except for that last point. In no way did I ever state or do I think that Miami was lucky in any way in dominating the sport and having dominant teams from the early 80s until the mid 90s, and then a few years later for another 3 or 4 year span, 2001, 02, etc. That's the Miami dynasty. That's the Miami legacy right there. I just basically framed it. 19. I will say. I will say about
modern day.
What?
No, sorry.
I will even give them
in modern day college football.
You did what?
The University of Miami didn't usher in modern day football.
Modern day football. What? Define modern day football.
Modern day college football. Miami didn't bring that in.
What does that even mean? What does modern day college football mean?
I think it's a scope of things. And I wouldn't be able to give you, I wouldn't be able to speak about it very well, but I started reading Cain Mutiny by Bruce Feldman, and he starts like from the history, just touching on, highlights of college football, and he brings in race, and he said how these college football teams didn't have black players on their team. And
credit to other than Miami, but I think Miami was the first one in the state of Florida. And then Bobby Bowden followed suit because he needed to compete.
I would flip that evaluation around. Bobby Bowden had better football teams first than Miami did. Bobby Bowden brought Florida State to national prominence before Miami was brought to national prominence.
Yeah, but where was he in the? Okay, but as far as the African American players are concerned on college football teams historically in this country, Michigan apparently, people were looking at Michigan State as if it was going to be some easy game. From what I understand from this book, they were dominant in the 50s and 60s because they were one of the first college football teams that brought in black players. As a matter of fact, from what I understand, their core group was black. And they were winning national championships and dominating college football, Michigan State. So I do think there is, and I don't mean to jump to another thing either, but I do think you have to look at the historicity of college football teams, and you can't dismiss, Mark, because a team hasn't been relevant for years, that there isn't a strong tradition there that carries them. I mean, look at Alabama. They were just waiting. The environment was there. They were just waiting for that guy. And that guy was Nick Saban. And everything fell into place in Tuscaloosa. So I think you do have to look at the history of college football teams to better understand. So like when Christopher Foote called you and you reprimanded him for going back in time, even a year or two back, I thought that was extremely relevant to understand the scope of things of that team, where they come from. There's like a grace that runs through these colleges and these football programs. I can't explain it, but it's there. Miami continues to be relevant, even though we're not winning. You know what I see? And I lost touch for at least 10 years. I came back when Mark Richt started coaching that team, and I started following them almost daily to this day. For the past 5 years, I've been following UM daily. And I see that they're on national television all the time. Look at our fan base. It's huge. Some people may be disgusted with us. Disgusted might be too strong of a word. But, but we're there. And we're relevant. And
relevant, that depends on your reference point of relevant. That needs to be defined as well. Are you relevant on the field? No. You are not relevant on the field. You are not relevant toward winning championships. And I don't even mean national championships. I mean conference championships. Miami is not relevant. If Miami's relevant, then almost everybody's relevant. If Miami's relevant, Louisville's relevant, Wake Forest is relevant, Georgia Tech's relevant. We can go on and on and on. And in terms of moving what's happened in the past to the present and maintaining that balance. Pardon me?
Yeah, yes, sir. I'm just listening.
If we are to give, or if I am expected here to give Miami some type of reverence or respect based on what they've accomplished in the past, when we talk about the past, absolutely I will. I think that if I had the staff that could clip together all the comments I've made about Miami through the years, I could run a reel of me paying homage to the greatness of Miami football at different times in its history, primarily from 1983 to the mid-90s and then a few years around 2000. So I've certainly given honor and respect to what Miami has accomplished in the past. But based on what you're telling me, I should probably start an Army channel, and we should talk Army football, because Army was a all-time great national power in college football. So should we be talking about Army? Let's talk about Army and talk about them like it's 1945, because in 1945, it was Oklahoma and Notre Dame and Army So
I'm
we
not
can
saying
talk
that.
about Army football. You want to talk about a program today like it's 1983. Let's talk about Army like it's 1945.
The Army-Navy game, I don't have to tell you this. I don't even have to say this. You already know what I'm going to go. You already know what I'm going to say. But there's a tradition there. There's a reason why that thing gets sold out every year. I mean, Army's relevant in college football, Mark. Navy is relevant in college football.
Again, you have to define relevant.
And I'm telling this to the wrong guy.
You have to define relevant. There are different ways to measure relevant, and I'm not saying that I have the perfect definition of it. I'm saying that it's a different definition for each and every person. When it comes to Miami football, if you're going to talk about the name, the image, the brand, the tradition, the legacy, the fan base, the popularity, is Miami relevant? Yes. Let me finish. Yes, I've said this a million times, and I will state it again, that there is a relevancy to Miami football based on all of that I just mentioned. But if we are talking about winning football games that matter on the field, that impact championships, Miami is not relevant, and they have not been relevant for years. And if they are, then almost everyone in the country is relevant.
And I would love to learn about yes. And yes, I do think, in a way, I do think that. I would love to know about the history of these programs. Well, it would make me a better, I think I would just be a more informed fan. That I'd be able to speak a little bit more about it and appreciate college football more. And when I watch and I think about college football, I'm not pushing this on you. I think you do this as, one of the best. So that's not what I'm pushing on you. But I think I'd be able to understand better what I'm seeing on the television or what I'm reading about on the internet or what I'm listening to. It would broaden my understanding of that, Anyway. And I don't have to push that on you because you have like 2 million channels for each college football team. So massive credit.
Well, I appreciate that, but Landfound, I'm just trying to be clear here that based on your viewpoint and your definition of relevancy, it sounds like there are dozens and dozens of teams across America who are relevant, and I don't think there's anything wrong with that. I'm just stating that if in that viewpoint you make Miami relevant, and I'm talking about currently right now, then all these other schools and teams are relevant as well. There are people that comment in the live chat almost every day that their standard for relevancy in college football is like about 3 schools, and that's about it. They think everybody else is basically playing meaningless football. And if you're not named Alabama, Ohio State, Clemson, I guess this year, Georgia now, and Oklahoma, you're pretty much, we don't care.
Yep. Including, that's me. And I don't even care outside of my team, which is Miami. I don't. That's just how I am. And if Miami's not winning, I don't watch. Whatever sport it is. So, anyway. Thank you.
Thank you, Landfound. I always appreciate your honesty, and I appreciate the discussion/debate. That's why we're here.
Awesome. Talk to you later. Bye.
Thank you so much. Bye-bye. So I think that this comment that I just posted here is beautiful. We got BW. BW's been watching for a long, long time. San Diego State, that is BW's team. They're relevant to BW. They're relevant to thousands of people, tens of thousands of people, hundreds of thousands. San Diego State football is relevant in their world, in their definition of what they care about and what's relevant to them. San Diego State is relevant. That's perfectly fine. That's great. San Diego State's even relevant to me to a certain extent, because if there's anybody who's on here every day talking about college football, and that I mean every day, and watches, if we ran down the bowl list of San Diego State bowl games in its history, believe me, I've pretty much watched all of them, because I like watching bowl games and because I try to watch as much college football as I possibly can. And so I enjoy every slice of it. I enjoy every conference. I know that some people that watch me don't think I give the group of five the respect that I should. And doesn't have anything to do with those young men and those coaches who bust their tails and who are really good at what they do. It's just a matter of I'm one guy and there's 130 teams. So I'm going to watch the best teams play and watch the most relevant, there's that word, relevant matchups on Saturday. But certainly when there's only a group of five games on a Thursday or Friday, those are the games I'm watching, and I would like to see more. And during bowl season, I get to catch up on the Mountain West teams and the American Conference teams and the Sun Belt teams, etc. And sure, I was locked in on BYU playing Coastal Carolina because I thought that was a phenomenal story that they laid it on the line and put that game together. And that was a tremendous game. So, UTEP's relevant. Whomever is relevant to a group of people. There is a number of people, whether that's 5 or 50 or 5 million, that particular team and program is relevant. And so when people call in and bring up that term, I just want them to define it. Like people will say, is so-and-so overrated? Or is this team relevant? And I'll just say, just define that for me. Or if they say, who's got a better program, this program or that program, I'll say, what are you talking about right this second? Or are we talking about historically? All right. I appreciate everybody being here. Let's see if we have anything else on the live chat. The biggest mistake I made tonight was not hydrating while I was listening to Land Found. Eric asking, what game are you most excited for this weekend? For me, it's Iowa, Penn State. And since we do have Friday to look at the entire schedule, we will do that then. LW. ESPN and the media's fault. Since the playoffs, they only focus on the playoffs and everybody else sucks. Not good for the sport. I agree. It's always fun to have a call like that and then go back. It's always fun to go back and then see the comments. Christopher, Mark thinks every team sucks. If there is one person on the internet or television, but typically the internet, because television, they just don't on traditional TV talk like this. But if there's one person that talks the most respectfully about these teams and coaches, I think it's got to be me. I hear all sorts of language thrown out there. Basically, they're garbage, they're trash, they're a dumpster fire, they're hot garbage. Do you hear me saying that? I might say somebody's schedule's garbage. And the only issue I ever have with calls like we just had is that if somebody claims that I said something that I did not say, and Land Found did not do that whatsoever. His only one response that was a bit odd was when he said that I thought that Miami should be on some kind of island and that they were lucky or something like that. Other than that, it was fair. All right. Next up here at the Voice of College Football, who's on the line?
Hey, Mark, it's J-Dub calling in from Des Moines. Excellent show again tonight.
Thank you so much. Appreciate that. What's going on tonight in Des Moines?
Well, excited for Saturday's game, of course, the Penn State-Iowa game. I wanted to talk a little bit about the relevance. That's such a slippery slope because you made such a great point. I mean, a lot of Iowa State fans around here, and historically, they're about as irrelevant as you can possibly get. I mean, you look at the history of the program, and very few schools have struggled in the history of college football like the Cyclones. But to their fans, they're all there is. So it's a matter of how, to precisely say how you said, what is your standard for relevance? That's what really matters. If you're going to go by, well, I want my team to once a decade have a real shot at a national championship or something like that, then I think one of the most insane fan bases is Michigan. Michigan has one Associated Press national championship. One. Alabama has 13. But yet Michigan fans will say, well, we've got more wins than anybody else. We're the blue blood of college football. Well, I mean, there's so many different ways you can go by this standard, by this standard, by this standard. It's all speculative in a way.
I agree. There would be very few programs in the country, and we could name them, that are pretty difficult to push out of the relevance category. And if you're not going to consider them relevant, then you're really not going to consider anyone relevant. Like if somebody said, well, Alabama's not relevant, well, then you pretty much just watch your team, and that's fine. If they're not relevant to you personally, that's fine. We all make our choices in life, but that's obviously a ridiculous statement to make.
Well, I was born in 1966. I graduated from Alabama in 1989. So in my lifetime, Alabama won 3 national championships in the 70s. But then we went from 79 to 92 without winning one.
Yep.
And then we went from 92 to 2009 without winning one.
Yep.
So how do you want to judge their record? They've got 10 in my 55 years. That's a pretty good clip. But there was a 13-year stretch followed by a 17-year stretch where they didn't do anything as far as national championships go. So, I mean, pick and choose how you want to judge, you know?
For sure. For sure.
I just think, you know, one guy's relevance is another guy's you suck, you know? But that's one of the things that makes college football so great, that we can have these arguments, and, you know, that both sides can be right and both sides can be wrong all at the same time.
Sure. Now, you know, if somebody's going to get on here and say, and it's stated all the time because people love to use this word, if they say Alabama sucks or Ohio State sucks, well, you know, that's obviously just kind of a, you don't like that team, so you say they suck. Well, that's a ridiculous statement to make, because then if they suck, everybody sucks. So just to clarify, because we like to be accurate here at the Voice of College Football, you meant that Michigan had won one AP national championship since a certain point, correct? Since like 1948, I believe.
Unless I have some, yes, the AP first, I think 36 was the first year for the AP poll.
Michigan,
which is kind of the gold standard. That's what everybody.
AP national championships.
I'm sorry, who?
Michigan has 9 AP national championships
Since 1936.
9 AP national championships. Let me see here.
Because if you look at the national media says the quote unquote the modern, they always say 1936 forward. For some reason they choose 1936.
Well, that's the first year of the AP. So so the first listing I looked at was inaccurate, because I always knew that Michigan, of course, they won in 97, split a national championship. That I didn't think that they had won one since 1948 before 1997. So let's see here. In the AP, 1948. So the next one's not going to be until 1997. So that's only 2. So that first listing I looked at was wrong. That's not right. And Alabama has, according to Wikipedia, 12 AP national championships. Notre Dame 8, Oklahoma 7, Miami 5, Ohio State 5, USC 5.
All right. So if you're going to say, well, relevant, I mean, 2 doesn't come up to 12, 2 doesn't come up to 7, 2 doesn't come, 2 in 84 years, 85 years. I mean, there's a lot of schools that would love to have one. Don't get me wrong. I'm not trying to tear Michigan apart. They'd like to have one, but there are some fan bases. I think all fan bases, certainly Alabama's fan base. I'm not trying to excuse the Tide. Everybody's fan base has got their blowhards that think they are the cock of the walk. There's nobody should even be on the field with them. We've all got those. But there are some schools that seem to generate more of a backlash from non-interested parties that just don't want to hear it anymore. And in my honest opinion, and feel free to disagree with me, I think Michigan and Miami are 2 of the schools that throw some of their fan base, they make a lot of noise, And like you said, what's Miami done in the last 18 years? They had a great run. They had a fantastic run, but that run's not happening now, and it hasn't happened for quite a while. And before that run, there was nothing. So it's not a long, extended period over decades and decades and decades. Bear Bryant won 6 in 25 years. Saban has won 6 in 14 in Tuscaloosa. Those are pretty good stretches. But in between those stretches, in between Bryant's last title in 79 and Saban's first in 09, you got 30 years where there's only one. The Gene Stallings won in 92. So, do you want to take the long-term look at the Crimson Tide, or do you want to talk about the two stretches? And that's the thing about Miami. Does Miami want to take a long-term look? Well, then you're talking about adding a whole lot of years to the number of titles you have. And so it lessens, I'm trying to say, it kind of, how do you want to play with the math?
Well, all the great powers in college football, whether that's Alabama, Notre Dame, Ohio State, etc., USC, have had, as you just stated, decades and decades and decades and decades and decades of excellence with few dry spells. Miami's kind of the opposite. Miami, I don't know when their football program originated. I could look it up. It's probably about 80 to 100 years old. It's relatively new compared to the other programs we're talking about, but still they have played 10 to 15 seasons of, if you want to state relevant or impactful championship caliber football. They have played competitive on the national stage from around 1980 to 94, and then a few years after that for about 3 years. They've got about 15 years of excellence, and the rest of it's non-existent.
Yes. Whereas, which I would agree with your argument, Notre Dame, an extended period of greatness. Ohio State, Oklahoma, Southern California, Alabama. Those are teams that have, long stretches where, if you drop the dart onto the map, you're likely to find that team being very competitive at any given moment. But there are some fan bases that think that's their team. That's my argument against the Miami argument, my argument against the Michigan argument. The numbers over the long stretch don't back it up. There's huge gaps where they're not to be found.
To your point, if someone asked me the day Nick Saban was hired at Alabama, is Alabama relevant? Well, if we were having this discussion, I would say, well, are you talking about like right this second in college football based on who are the best teams that are playing the best football and competing for a championship? I would have said, no, it's been about 7 or 8 years since Alabama was at that level. But I would say,
yeah, I would have agreed.
Yeah, if we were talking about what's going on right this second in college football. But
right.
A place like Alabama, and I think there are only about 5 or 6 of these places, is in a sense always relevant. So I would have answered that in 2 different ways. I would have said right this second, no, LSU and Ohio State and whoever in 07 was really good, Texas, and I'd say, well, those are the teams competing for national championships. Florida, of course. Yes, those are the teams that are competing for national championships. USC and Alabama's been 1999 would have been their last SEC championship game. So I would have said, it's been about 7 or 8 years since they've been really good. They did have a couple decent seasons in there, of course. So I would have said, well, they're not competing. If relevant is your definition of relevant is competing for a national championship, then no. But Alabama has reached a threshold, like I believe, and this is just my opinion, like I believe Ohio State has, and Notre Dame has, and Michigan has, and USC has, and Texas, and Oklahoma, and I'm pretty much going to stop there. Maybe Penn State and Nebraska, maybe, where in a sense it's always relevant, and it would take decades. It would take, like, again, if we were sitting here in 2007, you asked me that about Alabama, I would have disclaimed that comment by saying, not right this second, but Alabama, in a sense, is always relevant because it's just been built over decades and decades and decades and decades of dominance and football tradition that they have almost reached a place where they're always going to be relevant. And it would take going 3-9 for 50 years for that to disappear.
Right. I mean, you wouldn't compare the long tradition, the what you think of when the name Ohio State is mentioned. You wouldn't then look at Purdue and put Purdue in the same category. They're just not the same thing. I mean, you're talking about two different levels, two different histories, two different traditions, and if you dare say so, two different levels of relevance.
Now, Clemson is in a particular place where they have a good football tradition, a good history of being a top 15 to 20 program. That's where they rank in all-time wins, in winning percentage, those sorts of things. They're around 15 to 20. But, of course, they have been what they've been for the last 7 or 8 years. And so if, let's say, they drop off and they become a 7-5, 8-4 team for the next 10 years, if somebody's going to ask me in 10 years, is Clemson relevant? I don't think that this run for 6 or 7 years sustains it throughout history, where I'm going to say, well, yeah, Clemson was really good for that 6 or 7 years when Dabo Swinney was there and they were competing for national championships. But, well, that was 10 years ago. No, they keep going 7-5 now. They're really not relevant on a national stage. And they, in my mind, and again, I'm not saying that I have the perfect definition. This is just for me. They had not reached that Alabama, Ohio State, USC level to say, well, they can go through 7-5 for 10 years, and you're still going to say, well, it's still Alabama, it's still Ohio State, it's still USC. I don't think Clemson has done that.
Well, it's what makes all the fighting and all the arguing fun, because you can, you know, we can agree, we can disagree, we can think the next guy is just an absolute idiot because he can't see the forest for the trees, and you're never going to convince him otherwise. It's just one of those things. It's not like the NFL where you're going to have everybody's got a chance at a playoff, and all things being equal, there's a super, you know. It's just one of the things I think that it makes college football such a special sport. And I'll get out of the way. I know you got other people that want to talk. I appreciate you taking my call. Thanks, Mark.
Thank you so much for the call. Appreciate that. And I was thinking, hopefully not too many more to talk. We'll take one more call. We got one other person on the line, and I think that we can wrap it up from there. Welcome to the Voice of College Football. Who's on the line?
This is Jack in Lansing, Michigan.
Hey, Jack.
I was listening to this. I've enjoyed this. It's something I've newly discovered here, and I like watching it on YouTube and stuff.
Thank you.
Couple things. One thing I've noticed this week that's kind of surprised me. I'm a Michigan fan, even though I live in Lansing. Yeah, I've noticed that I don't think I've seen a single person on the prediction shows this week pick Michigan. Everybody's picking Nebraska, and I kind of have two ways of looking at that. It makes me curious, but I also suppose it could be good blackboard material for Michigan. before they show up there. But on the other discussion you had, and I'll get off the phone fairly quickly here. Michigan, I think those other 5 AP championships were in the pre-modern era.
You're correct. Yeah,
and I believe that.
Yep.
I believe that at that time there was it wasn't as organized. People were claiming national titles because some newspaper would rank somebody number 1 or something like that, and so you had multiple champions in a lot of years before that. But what I learned about Michigan that made them special was, I remember I worked for a newspaper, and Michigan State had upset Michigan that particular game back in the 90s. And somebody came in and was boasting about it for Michigan State. And my editor at the time, who was a Michigan fan, said, okay, right now, $10 a game forever. Michigan State. And that was the idea. It was that Michigan gets you in the long run, or at least the teams they play a lot. Over the long haul, they come out ahead. I never thought that they had, all I got to do is look in an almanac, and Michigan hasn't won that many national titles. So anyway, I just wanted to put that in. I just was watching that, and it kind of made me interested in commenting.
No, I appreciate the call. I believe this is the first time you've called, so you're welcome anytime.
Well, like your show a lot. I think you're one of the best ones I've seen.
I appreciate that. Thank you so much for that.
Okay.
I'm glad you found us. Have a good night.
Have a good night.
You too. And with that, I will wrap it up here. We will all wrap it up together because, sometimes I get asked or it gets criticized about the name, the voice of college football. Well, you folks did that. So somebody asked me that, and in a very nice way. They weren't being critical. They just asked me that the other day, and I said, I didn't come up with that. There's probably 15 or 20 people that came up with that watched the show. But it's also got a dual meaning that we all have a voice. As we heard tonight, I like to give time and an ear to all of you to give your voice, whether that's in the live chat or via the phone lines. So together we are the voice of college football. All right. And in addition to my analysis, of course, I bring on contributors from all over the place, and they have a voice to contribute to the conversation as well. Best discussion, debate, and analysis. That's our aim. That's our goal. That's our mission. So I don't say that we have the best discussion, debate, and analysis, but that is what we are aiming for here at the Voice of College Football. I believe I will be online tomorrow night. So hit that bell for the notifications to know when we go live. I would like to go live at some point tomorrow night to set us up for a big weekend of college football. Great to see everybody here. And thank you so much for joining us. Keep in mind that Venmo, PayPal, and Cash App, MarkRogersTV. Also, we've got a website, voiceofcollegefootball.com. Check it out. And we will see you hopefully tomorrow night. If not, I'm going to be here pretty much all day Saturday. So we'll see you then.